all so much for what you've done by being out here today. I really, really appreciate it. We got 12 days to go. 12 days to go.
Yes, sir.
So let's go do it. Do we have any press? No press for the 12?
We're honored to have with us the two candidates, major candidates for governor. Governor Ehrlich, good morning to you, sir.
Good morning, Senator.
Governor O'Malley, good morning to you. We have worked out an arrangement. We've worked out an arrangement that they both will give a 2-minute opening statement, and then we will have, with the support of my timer here, 2 minutes and 40 seconds in response to questions that we have received and have accumulated. Again, also on behalf of our General Manager, Mr. Howard Major, Operation Manager, Mr. Al Payne, and the Ready You One family, it's our honor to have the two of you join us this morning. Governor, you first.
Hey, Senator Young, thanks very, very much. And thank you to WOLB, and thank you to the Radio 1 family. Most especially, I want to begin by thanking the people of Maryland for the honor of serving you and leading our state forward through these very challenging and difficult last few years. As this painful national recession comes to a close, Maryland is moving forward, and we're moving forward ahead of other states, creating new jobs again. We're restoring our economy through innovation and education, and we're doing so far better than most other states. But we still have a lot of work ahead of us. At this important time, you have a clear choice, and that choice is whether or not we move forward to better days or do we slip back. I humbly ask for your support to move Maryland forward. Every decision that I make is based on what is best for the people of Maryland, what is best for the hard-working families of our state. I have fought every battle on your side, standing up to big mortgage companies for moms and dads fighting to protect their homes from foreclosure, standing up to big utilities for consumers. With decisiveness and with fiscal discipline, we have cut state spending by greater amounts than any administration in history, and yet together we've also managed to protect the very priorities that allow us to make this change to a new and better economy. Improving our schools, making our neighborhoods safer, investing in innovation, making college more affordable for more families, making record investments in our historically black colleges and universities, and making record high awards to minority business firms, taking strong actions to restore the health of our Bay. In order for our president to be successful in moving America forward and out of this horribly painful recession, we must do our part here in Maryland to move Maryland forward. I love our state, and I'm very optimistic about that better future that we have the ability to achieve for our children when we realize that we're all in this together and that we can, in fact, move forward. Thanks very, very much.
Thank you as well. Governor Ehrlich?
Senator, it's great to see you. I want to introduce Kendall Ehrlich first. Thanks for being here, babe. I've been on this show many times. I've engaged with this audience. I've debated with you. I've debated with your guests 40, 50 times since I first ran, actually in the House of Delegates, then in Congress, then on to the governorship. This is not a new or unique place for me. I appreciate the opportunity this station has afforded me to talk to this community over many, many years. We've engaged, we've debated. I signed a letter to opportunity with regard to the African American community on this show. I announced for governor the first time in 2002 on the Larry Young Show. I hope your ratings were good that day, Senator. I presented that letter of opportunity, and I brought it with me here today. We signed that agreement because the African American community asked me what I would do as a Republican congressman, as governor, as the new governor, with regard to issues of importance to this community. We signed it, and I've been back on this show many, many times over the past few years talking about the success of that program in this community. We invested in HBCUs. We had a diverse cabinet, 12 African-American judges, the first African-American judge of Maryland's Eastern Shore in history of the state of Maryland. We empowered minority businesses. We had the most progressive program of pardons and commutations in the country. Compton, Morgan, you name it. That's our record. Those are the facts. Today, Senator, I bring you something new. That's the former letter of opportunity, and today I'm presenting to you the next step with regard to opportunity in the African American community. We'll talk about this during the course of the show. Governor, I have a copy for you as well. Take a look at your leisure. Senator, I have a copy for you as well. This new compact we released today talks about African American leadership in our new government, taking on gang violence, empowering entrepreneurs, ensuring civil rights for children, and obviously educational opportunity. I look forward to engaging here today, Governor. I really appreciate the opportunity. Again, this third debate, the people deserve to hear from both of us. Senator, it's good to see you. I want to thank WOLB for hosting this debate again today. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Gentlemen, I have a question that, as I was preparing for this, talking in the barbershop, and I asked the folks, if you had to ask a question of each of you, what would be the question? And the majority fell on this one. Governor O'Malley, I want to ask you first. When you were mayor of Baltimore City, you made much progress in the reduction of crime in the city. However, critics have raised questions about the zero tolerance strategy that led to the arrests of hundreds of African-American males. Can you talk about that strategy and your public safety strategy for the future?
Sure. In 1999, Senator, our city had become the most addicted, the most violent, and over a 30-year period, the most abandoned city in America. We had open-air drug markets that seemed to proliferate and go unchecked throughout our city. Many of us had given up any hope that we'd ever be able to reclaim our corners for the good and decent people that live in every single neighborhood of our city. We began to turn things around in 1999. We called on one another to believe in ourselves, not accept a lower standard of justice and a lower level of police response in poor neighborhoods than we would expect in wealthier neighborhoods. And with a three-pronged strategy, we began the hard and difficult work of turning our city around. Part of it was more effective and better policing, including better policing of our police. Mine was the first administration that had a civilian review board in place all through our first term and through the second term, and I assigned investigators to report to that board independently. In the course of that time, we began to reduce violent crime, not only with better policing, we also did so by doubling drug treatment funding. We achieved about a 60% reduction in drug-related emergency room admissions over a 7-year period of time. We opened the very first inpatient drug treatment center at Gaudenzia on Park Heights Avenue. And there was a third prong to this approach to reducing violent crime, and that was becoming more engaged in rescuing young people who were at risk of being taken to early graves or early prison cells by drug gangs, by drug dealers that would use them, that would shoot them, and that would mule them. So those were the three strategies. Baltimore has achieved, over the last 10 years, the third largest reduction in violent crime of any of the major cities in America.
Thank you very much. Governor Ehrlich, there's interest in wanting to know, if governor, are we going to see Governor Ehrlich with Newt Gingrich, Governor Ehrlich with George Bush, Governor Ehrlich with Sarah Palin, Governor Ehrlich with Matthias emphasis, or the Tea Party emphasis? If governor, what governor are we going to see of Bob Ehrlich?
Governor Ehrlich with Kendall Ehrlich is what you're going to see. And at least one of those folks you just mentioned campaigned against me in the primary. I mean, I'm about as transparent a politician you've ever seen. As we've discussed, I've been on this show dozens and dozens of times. For some, maybe 10, 15 years ago, it would have been counterintuitive for a Republican congressman to appear on the Larry Young Show. And I see you shaking your head, and we've had that conversation privately. I've been to the barbershops. I've talked to the people. Talked to the people about 108,000 Baltimore City residents arrested in 1 year. 108,000 people arrested in a city of less than 600,000 people. That's not a safety or a crime initiative. That's simply mass arrests, creating criminal records for people who do nothing more than walking down the street. Intolerable, in my view.
During the past several weeks, there's been a diverse group of African-American stakeholders. This group has met. It's a part of a consensus-forming group, and they've taken upon themselves to recommend, as you will see in tomorrow's Afro-American newspaper, concerns, issues. I'd like to share with you those quickly, 11, and I would like for you to choose which of the three that you would like to address. Those issues: the 7th Congressional District and legislative redistricting, appointments by the governor, crime and violence, economic development, education, health, housing.
Larry, slow down.
Yeah, come on. There's a break here. So give us a break here,
It's
sir.
education and health. Education.
Education was the last one, right?
Health, housing, job training, juvenile services, labor, minority business, unemployment. Choose any one of the three.
First.
You first, sir.
Let's go for it. Reapportionment. We've had this discussion on your show. The 7th Congressional District, i.e. a minority district in the United States House of Representatives. And it's an interesting type of discourse for anyone that follows politics. On this show, on this audience, and it's easy for me to say, of course we'll have a minority district. It's the law. It's representative of Maryland. It's easy to say. We'll both say it, I'm sure. But here's the practical problem. Once I do that, and I will, then I'll be charged with packing African-American votes into one congressional district in order to elect more Republicans around the state of Maryland. I asked you on your show a few weeks ago, are you going to defend me when the white political establishment, the Democratic white political establishment, attacks me for doing that? You honestly said, no, you're not going to defend me when that occurs. And I appreciate your honesty. But the fact of it is that charge will be made. Reapportionment is an inherently political process. You need both parties in the room, not a monopoly, and everybody knows it. Under our administration, African Americans were well represented. They'll certainly be well represented with regard to the process and reapportionment during our next administration. You talked about crime and punishment. We had the most aggressive program of pardons and commutations in the country, and for some that would be counterintuitive. A Republican governor. 448 case reviews, 6 lifer cases. I was critical of Governor Glendening, who did not engage in this process. I was critical of Governor Schaefer, who did not engage in this process. I believe as governor, you get to do justice. We had the most progressive and aggressive program of pardons and commutations in this country. I'm quite proud of it. And by the way, I know you'd like to talk about my political base and some of the folks you just mentioned. It wasn't exactly a major push or emphasis from that base for me to engage in that program. But we did it. We met monthly with my senior leadership team. We did justice in this state. And as a result, justice was better served in the state of Maryland. Is that my time?
Still got 40 seconds.
Okay. Project Restart, cognitive redevelopment behind bars. Too often we have this vicious cycle of addiction, offense, incarceration, continued addiction, reoffense. We know it. Governor Mallory's a criminal defense lawyer. He gets it. I married a public defender and prosecutor. She gets it. We all know it. Without cognitive redevelopment and real drug treatment and true mental health services provided behind bars, that vicious cycle of incarceration will continue. This has been a major issue with the Black Caucus over many years. Again, we were aggressive and progressive during our time in Annapolis, and I believe my time is up.
Thank you much. Governor Mallory.
I'd love to talk about all of these things. Hopefully we have more time to talk about them in the course of this hour. We have appointed twice as many African Americans to the bench as the former governor has. Together we've achieved the steepest reduction in homicides over these last 3 years. But let me use my time to talk about jobs, minority business enterprises, and also about education. There is no more important place in our state than a family's home, and there is no way to protect that home without a job. After 3 years of this miserable recession that George Bush supported 90% of the time during his years in Congress by Bob Ehrlich, after this horrible recession that our country's been driven into, we have to do everything in our power to create more jobs. Jobs are created by the private sector, but I do believe that our government can help, especially when it comes to these dire circumstances and getting out of this recession. I am so grateful that President Obama acted when he acted. The former governor never misses an opportunity to criticize President Obama for taking the action that saved us from going into the second Great Depression. But there are approximately 17,000 moms and dads in Maryland today that have jobs and are able to protect their home because of the Recovery and Reinvestment Act. The public-private partnership that we put together at the Port of Baltimore is employing 5,700 people. We were the only state to pull off one of those public-private partnerships last year, and we were able to go toe-to-toe with bigger states to attract the next generation of electric drive motor to GM here in White Marsh. So we are now having, Senator Young, a better year of new job creation than we have had since the year 2000, which, by the way, was the last time I think that we had a Democratic president in the White House. But we need to continue to move forward every day in every way we can. Another very important thing that our state has done over the last 4 years is we have increased to all-time record high dollar amounts and record high percentages the amount of state procurement dollars going to minority-owned businesses in the state of Maryland. Last year, $1.6 billion. When the former governor was in Congress, he actually voted to repeal the MBE program at the federal level, the disadvantaged business enterprises. That's not leadership. Finally, on education, we have made record investments in education, not only in operating funding, all-time high in Prince George's County and Baltimore City, but when he cut school construction, we've actually increased it in tougher times by 58%.
Do we get a response
Yes.
to that? You cut school construction $150 million last year, as you know.
Not true.
Well, the fact checkers, you've lost twice on fact checks, by the way, and the press is here, so let's be careful as far as what you're talking about. The vote in Congress, I have no idea what you're talking about. Secondly, third, with regard to our record on MBEs, check the record. From 2003 to 2005, MBE participation in state contracts went from 15% to 21%. And you know it, all the members of the legislature right here. A net gain of almost $400 million from FY03 to 05. Those are the numbers. The fact checkers will, you get to do this stuff. You get to run these attack ads. You get to make these drive-by 30-second statements. But guess what? In debates, you get checked, and you're 0 for 2 with regard to your factual allegations during these debates.
That's not true. Can I respond
Yes,
to
sir.
that?
Just 1 minute.
And furthermore, not only did he vote in 1998 against the Disadvantaged Business Enterprise Program with regard to federal transportation contracts, but he also, when he was governor, said that the MBE program needs to end. I don't believe that the MBE program needs to end. I believe, in fact, that our diversity is our strength. And I believe that because we have the highest number of African-American-owned firms on a per capita basis of any state in the country, that is an economic strength that allows us also to draw dollars into our state from BRAC relocations, draw dollars into our state because of cybersecurity, pull dollars into our economy because of life science and biotech. The former governor, when he was in Congress, Senator, earned an F. Not just 1 year that he was in Congress, every year he earned an F from the NAACP. And it's because of votes, like the vote to repeal the Disadvantaged Business Enterprises Program, as well as voting against the Civil Rights Protection and the Help America Vote Act, that he earned that F every single year that he was in Congress from the NAACP.
Governor, you haven't read these bills. You have no idea what you're talking about, and you just did another whopper. Do you think if Senator, I'll direct this question to you.
Which I can't answer.
Well, you're right. It's rhetorical. Don't worry. You don't need to. Do you think if I would have said the MB program needs to end, do you think that would have been the subject of discussion on your show? Is that along the lines of your lobbyist ads and your banker ads and your cut spending ads and all the silly stuff you've been running? Enough of this stuff. This is about leadership. It's about facts. It's about vision. And it's about serious. Not looking at 15-year-old votes and coming up from Congress when you don't even know what you're talking about, as your ads don't know what you're talking about. Enough of this stuff. Man, this is the governorship of the state of Maryland. This is serious stuff. It's not just revisionist history. You don't get to reinvent facts. You get to reinvent opinion maybe, but not facts.
Gentlemen, let me ask a question on education.
Wow.
In order to provide more input and oversight for the residents of Baltimore City in education and their children, the question is threefold. Would you support a school board made up of 3 positions elected by the citizens of Baltimore, 2 positions appointed by the governor, 2 positions appointed by the mayor of Baltimore. Mandate all colleges and universities in Maryland receiving public funds prepare, publish, and implement a strategy for increasing the number of African Americans that graduate from their institutions. And finally, commit to the elimination of duplication of HBCUs courses by historically white higher education institutions.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Governor. Sorry about that.
First.
Do I go first?
Yes,
okay. On the issue of the school board, I would work with the Baltimore City delegation and the mayor of Baltimore, who I'm grateful is here today, Mayor Stephanie Rawlings Blake, who's moving our city forward with dignity and determination. Senator, I have not been much in favor of elected school boards. We do have some in some parts of our state, and we generally defer to the local preference for the delegation of the county. But I think what most cities that are improving education in big cities have shown is that when the mayor steps up and when the mayor takes more responsibility rather than less, schools start to improve. You become more successful in recruiting great leaders to great schools. Our Baltimore City schools are actually improving student achievement at a better rate than virtually any big city school system in the country. And great news today in the Baltimore Sun about the, I think, record high graduation rate for black male students in the city of Baltimore in our high schools. So we're on the move. I personally believe that clear lines of authority so that we can enfranchise, not disenfranchise parents. In other words, parents should be able to know if the schools aren't improving, who they get to vote against in order to correct that problem. Who can they go to talk to? And I think the mayor of Baltimore should actually have more authority over city schools and the direct appointment of the city school board. Right now, it's kind of a hybrid system. Let me move on to the second one. Higher graduation rates. The biggest impediment to graduating more students from our colleges, including more minority students from our colleges, is the skyrocketing cost of college tuition. When the former governor was in office in easier times, he chose to jack up college tuition by 40%. No governor, to our knowledge in Maryland history, had ever increased college tuition by 40% in a 3-year period of time. We now have gone 4 years in a row, and the only state to do so, without a penny's increase in college tuition. I believe that the way we strengthen and grow the ranks of our middle class, the way we make this turn into a new innovation economy, is by making sure more and more of our people have college degrees. On the duplication issue, we have increased by 37% to all-time high levels our investment in our historically black colleges and universities. When the former governor was in office, he created the poster child for duplication in the business program at University of Baltimore and Towson.
Boy, I'm really happy for these debates. I thank the station again. To answer your question, the question was about elected school board, and I certainly talked to the Baltimore City delegation, but I like empowering the people. And to the extent elected school boards empower people, it has a great deal of attraction to me. The hybrid that you described has some appeal as well. But elected school boards have certainly some appeal, particularly during this day and age when parents are demanding results. With regard to graduation rates and African Americans in Baltimore City, we've had this continuing debate over the last number of years concerning what works and what does not work, what is functional, what is dysfunctional. We're the first administration in history of the state to pass charter schools. We now have the first residential charter school, the Seed School in Baltimore. I want to quadruple residential charters. I want to double charters in the state of Maryland. We have 44 charters in Maryland. We have 34 in Baltimore City. One of the reasons for those improving numbers, those statistics, is the number of charter schools in the city of Baltimore and the fact those kids are getting educated at a very high level. With regard to Thornton funding, the legislature passed Thornton in 2002 as a sort of a political gimmick for some, a constitutional right for others. It did not, however, pass a funding source because Kathleen Kennedy Townsend was going to be the next governor. Well, Bob Ehrlich won. Bob Ehrlich did not get his slots bill because of games played in the Maryland House of Delegates. We still fully funded Thornton and spent more money at the time than any administration in history of the state on public education. And, by the way, I got to go to audiences around the state of Maryland and say, we committed $1.4 billion. It's a constitutional right. It's not discretionary. And here are the numbers being produced by these dollars. It makes sense to me. Concerning the demagoguery on college tuition, the ads aren't working, as you notice from the polls. Over the last 4 years, system schools cost to attend system schools, College Park and other system schools, has increased 35%. You like to talk about fees? Those fees have increased dramatically. Secondly, with regard to Maryland parents, Maryland kids have been hurt by this freeze over the last 30 years, particularly schools such as Towson. 5% less kids at the system as a whole, a lot less Maryland kids at Towson University as a result of this freeze. When you have an artificial freeze for political purposes, you end up hurting Maryland parents. You end up letting less Maryland kids into school. You end up taking more out-of-state kids at higher tuition rates in order to make up the shortfall.
Do I get to respond?
Yes, sir.
What's my time, Senator?
You've got 1 minute to respond.
1 minute.
Yes, sir.
The fact is that the number of children going in-state and going out-of-state, that proportion has remained virtually constant over the last 6 or 7 years. On the seed school, I was last night with, in fact, Eric Adler, who's the head of the seed school, and I helped to bring the seed school here. Traveled to D.C., worked with Gene Hitchcock in the legislature in order to bring the seed school to Southwest Baltimore, where we have a great board with a lot of really good people on it, including Kevin Lyles and Lynn Vinatulis and others. During my time in serving the people of Baltimore as their mayor, we actually had more charter schools that we created in Baltimore City than the rest of the state combined. The former governor has made one very specific promise in this race with regard to funding and funding of education. He has said that he would cut the very aspect of education funding that benefits Baltimore City and Prince George's County the most. It is the one thing that he has said that he would do, is cut education funding that goes primarily to Baltimore City, Prince George's, and Montgomery County.
Senator, 3 fact checks here. And I'm glad the reporters are here because you're going to have another bad day in the newspapers tomorrow when they check those Maryland admittee numbers. Secondly, you were silent when I was begging Mike Miller in 2003, 15 minutes before Siney died at the end of session, to get Maryland's first charter school bill passed. But we did it, and congratulations to Mike Miller for allowing that to happen. Third, geographic cost of education index was a political football that allowed Thornton to be passed in 2002. The former Attorney General Joe Kern held it was not part of Thornton. It was discretionary. You didn't even fund it in your budget. You cut education. In fact, I showed you the headline last debate, O'Malley to reduce education funding, 2007. That was a discretionary part of Thornton in order to get it passed, to get votes from the Montgomery County delegation. It's always been discretionary. We didn't fund it the first time. You didn't fund it in your budgets. You funded through stimulus dollars.
2 questions on the area of health that I want to ask you. I'll ask them separately. You can respond separately. Since 2007, Maryland has expanded health care coverage to over 200,000 Maryland parents, children, and seniors, and it's gone from 44th to 16th in the nation in health care coverage for lower-income people, largely through a law enacted in 2007 with bipartisan support in the Maryland General Assembly. What will you do to protect this life-saving health care coverage expansion during these tough budget times?
Senator Young, one of the things I'm most proud of the people of our state for accomplishing in these difficult times is getting us out of the basement in terms of Medicaid coverage. It's absolutely appalling that a state as strong as ours would allow little boys to die for an inability to get a toothache treated. We have extended health care benefits now to 225,000 people, half of them poor children, who did not have it before. We've created a dental benefit for poor children as well, and in the wake of the tragedy of DeMonte Driver. Part of what no progress is possible without fiscal responsibility. That's why we have had to make $5.6 billion in cuts and spending reductions to this budget. We have reduced state spending by more than any governor over a 4-year period in Maryland history, contrasted with the former governor's 33% increase in state general fund spending. But nonetheless, we've been able to make progress, and on health care, some very important progress. How did we do that? We did that by a funding source of raising a tax, yes, on tobacco in order to fund that. The former governor for the last 2 years has worked at a firm who has among its clients Big Tobacco. He was not in favor of that funding source. He was not in favor of extending health care coverage in Medicaid, and he did nothing, absolutely nothing during his years in office to advance the cause of people who, through no fault of their own, can't go to a doctor or bring their children to a doctor when they get sick. The biggest opportunity we have before us in the years ahead is the opportunity that comes from the courage that our president has shown in finally doing something that no other president, Democratic or Republican, has ever been able to do, and that is to pass a bill to extend health care for all. Maryland can be a leader in expanding health care for all. The former governor has said that he would try to sue President Obama to keep Maryland from having health care for all. I don't think that's leadership. I don't think that's constructive. I want the president to succeed because I know when he succeeds, all of us succeed. And I think we can be a leader. Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown is co-chairing, along with Secretary of Health John Colmers, our commission that's going to make the transition to health care for all. We're going to do this in a way that shows the rest of the country that this can actually happen, can be done well, can be a benefit for small businesses and our economy, and most importantly, for the health of all of our people. I am in favor of extending health care coverage, and I will do everything in my power to make it successful here in Maryland, thanks to President Obama's leadership.
You just have to stop making stuff up. And again, that's why we have debates. The record shows we expanded Medicaid coverage in the state of Maryland. The record shows we took advantage of waivers from the federal government. The record shows I do oppose the tobacco tax, and not because I had a job in the private sector. And it's okay to get a job in the private sector, by the way. You're going to be looking for one in a couple months, so it's okay. Enough of this stuff. My Lord. The federally subsidized health centers I championed in Congress. I championed them as governor, and they work. With regard to total spending, you've spent $124 billion over the past 4 years. My government spent $101 billion over the 4 years. That's a $23 billion quote-unquote advantage to you. Don't think it works. With regard to the federal bill, and I know we're on urban radio here, WOLB, and so you're going to take advantage of the fact that it's an African-American audience, and I get that, and we've heard it. But African-Americans, white Americans, Republican Americans, Democratic Americans, you name it, are in the state of Maryland. So this message goes out to everybody. The federal bill passed by Congress is flawed. It's deeply flawed. I'm not in Congress. I've read the bill. That's a joke. You're federalizing federal health care in this country. It's anti-market. It hurts working people. It raises taxes and does not get to the bottom line with regard to what it's supposed to do, which is increase access at affordable costs. There's no tort provisions in there. We practice defensive medicine in this country. And that's the reason so many Democrats around the country are running away from the bill. It has nothing to do with President Obama. By the way, he didn't even draft the bill. He blessed it, but it was Nancy Pelosi's and Harry Reid's bill. There's some good provisions in this bill with regard to tax credits for small business. There's some positive provisions in this bill with regard to people with disabilities. But I've read the bill. I've debated the bill. I ran 14, 15 shows one Saturday morning with regard to this bill. It's government preemption run wild. It's unaffordable. The quality of health care will suffer. And most of all, seniors will suffer. $500 billion in Medicare cuts for seniors in this country. You can shake your head, but read the bill. Read the bill. It's bad for seniors. It's bad for working people. It's bad for small business. It's bad for taxpayers. It's bad for the country. Do I want the bill revamped and amended? Yes. Keep the good parts. Do away with the bad parts.
Governor?
Among some of the very positive things that we were able to do, even before the president moved forward with this courageous bill to extend health care to all, was that we actually, in Maryland, raised the age on which kids living at home could stay on their parents' insurance to the age 25. Now, President Obama went 1 year further to 26. we also closed for the first time that Medicare donut hole where so many seniors fell into, where they were in a period where they had to choose between their groceries and their drug benefits, or rather their prescription drugs. We also created for the first time in Maryland a benefit for small businesses who want to join the ranks of the insured. There is no one solution to all of these things, but it requires work across the board in order to extend health care coverage to more people rather than fewer. During the former governor's term in office, 100,000 more Marylanders fell into the ranks of those that did not have health insurance. I believe when it comes to health care, we need to move forward and not back. We have an opportunity here, and I do not want to go back to those days when people could not go to see a doctor. I want to go forward to the days where every person is treated with dignity and respect and is able to go bring their child to a doctor if they become sick.
You know the problem with this bill, and this is really important, Senator, and we need a couple more minutes because we just disagree on this. The thrust of the bill, and Tom Daschle had a lot to do with this bill, is counterintuitive for our culture. Even during an era of managed care, we've gone to the federal and state level, and we have appeal processes for those of us who are denied coverage, or denied a procedure, denied a pill, denied a therapy. What this bill does is move in a very different direction with regard to our country. It moves in the direction of a Canadian, European-style healthcare delivery system. It's matrix healthcare. That's what concerns me. 50 years old and breast cancer, you might get that treatment. You might get that operation. But if you fall at 75 years old on the matrix with breast cancer, we may treat your pain. And I'm really emotional about this, and we both are. It's a legitimate area of disagreement. It's not personal at all. It's philosophical. It moves us in a way from our culture. Our culture is to extend, even sometimes when it's more expensive, and the president talked about 16% of GDP going to health care. And you know what my response to that was? Okay, because that's my mom. That's my dad. That's people with disabilities. I don't mind 16% of our gross domestic product going to health care. To me, that's not a broken system. I don't want to have a European-style healthcare delivery system where my mom's 75 years old with breast cancer, and thank God she doesn't have it, and she's 75 years old. Sorry, Mom, I gave you your age. But that's not our cultural value. It's countercultural to move in that direction. By the way, when that 75-year-old woman does not get breast cancer treatment, we will save money. We will save money. There's no doubt about it. We're saving money through the Medicare cuts too, but it's bad policy for our country.
Question number 2. Over the past dozen years, Maryland has reduced its smoking rate by over 30%, which is double the national average, saving the lives of over 70,000 Marylanders from tobacco-caused preventable deaths and reducing health care costs by over $2 billion. What will you do to continue this tremendous public health progress?
I think you took the money out of tobacco cessation in the state budget. We'll check that, but it's certainly been diminished greatly over the past few years. And so I'll let you answer that. But the fact of it is, we want young people, obviously, not to smoke. It's still, however, sort of a philosophical issue in our country. We want young people not to smoke. I'm a former athlete. I think we both agree. We can both agree on this very clearly, that smoking is bad for you. Smoking causes great harm. Young people shouldn't smoke. Send the messages out. We've had more regulation than ever with regard as far as commercial speech in this country, and we all support it. We understand that. But we also are begging sort of a philosophical debate in this country as far as adult behavior. And generally, I support adults having the freedom to decide. If you want to outlaw tobacco, say it straight up. And we'll have that debate in the state legislature and in Congress. I think that's a fair debate today. But until that's the case, it is adult behavior. Adults can purchase cigarettes in the state of Maryland. Certainly children should not.
Governor?
What's my time on this one, Larry? I'm sorry, I'm losing.
You have 2 minutes and 40 seconds.
Okay, thank you. The 30% reduction in smoking in our state is a real positive move. There are probably many things that have contributed to that, not only the smoking cessation programs, also the state suit when we sued Big Tobacco. Back when Joe Curran was Attorney General, great man, has beautiful grandchildren as well. And The other thing that I think has contributed to this is the ban on smoking in restaurants. Now, when we did that 3 or 4 years ago, lots of people said, oh, my goodness, it's going to be so uncompetitive. People won't go to restaurants in Maryland. And what we saw was the opposite happen. More people were willing to go out if they didn't come home feeling like they had to send whatever they were wearing to the dry cleaner right away or have to take a shower. The prevention programs are very important. We have had to cut virtually everything in this in our state budget. $5.6 billion in cuts, and yet record increases for schools, record increases for school construction, more invested in school construction in a 4-year period than ever before, and also record investments in our HBCUs, our historically black colleges and universities, and 4 years in a row without any increase in college tuition. What we need to do as a people is, especially with the opportunity presented to us of health care for all, is to combine wellness, combine prevention, combine nutrition, and combine early education in our schools, better diets for our kids in our schools through buy local programs and the other things that are being championed here and really forwarded by Baltimore City, because we need to get away from this notion that in our sort of Western style of healthcare, there's a pill for every malady. And instead, we need to embrace that spirit of wellness and that understanding that how we treat ourselves in terms of whether it's smoking or nutrition or the other choices and exercise, all of those go into making healthier people and healthier citizens. And that's why we are so active and engaged with First Lady Michelle Obama and her drive to reduce childhood obesity. And in conjunction with that, we have declared our goal of being the first state in the nation to eradicate childhood hunger by 2015. It can be done. It's not a matter of resources. It's a matter of political will. And all of this will make for a healthier population and a stronger economy.
Thank you.
And yeah, we both work out every day. I understand you work out every day. I work out every day. I think our wives work out every day. I mean, it's good for our kids to see it. It's good for role models to engage in this sort of behavior. It's just all good, obviously. And the goals that Governor O'Malley just articulated were our goals. They're the goals of any governor, quite obviously. We want our kids to be healthy, off the junk food, on the athletic fields, the whole 9 yards. I mean, this is all good. I've been, as you know, since I was retired from public life, I've been coaching the last few years. And it's been the greatest experience of my life. People say the greatest job, you know, Governor, it's a great job being governor, but being assistant defensive coordinator for the Cape St. Clair Cougars, 80, 90, and 100-pound teams has been a joy for me, and that's not political stuff. It's just the fact of, and those of you who know me know it's the truth. I've seen young boys, I've been with young boys over the past 3 years, more than I ever had in my life. And I've seen the value, obviously, of role models. I've seen the value of healthy lifestyles. I've also seen the value, quite frankly, Senator, of men as role models with young boys. It's not a new lesson for me, but it was a pretty good reminder of the central importance that men play with particularly young boys at impressionable ages on the athletic fields.
Question. What support efforts shall be done on behalf of the governor to ensure that veterans in the state of Maryland will have better quality of services implemented upon when dealing with mental and physical problems? I think, yes. Yes, sir. Governor.
240?
240, yes, sir.
One of the very positive things we've done over these last 4 difficult years with our country's continued involvement in foreign conflicts is we have been able to greatly increase our investment in behavioral mental health for our returning National Guard, and we've also been able to open up more offices in order to reach out to veterans all across our state. More recently, in the last legislative session, I think we passed a number of bills that helped disabled veterans, bills that we also increased the amount of scholarship dollars available for our returning veterans. So when they come back from that war zone, they can reintegrate here where we need them to be the strong moms, dads, brothers, and sisters that we need here on the home front so that they can go to college. What we've seen with regard to the onset of the syndromes that come from coming out of the theater is that they usually onset about 6 months after a person's back. That's when you really start seeing the problems manifest themselves. So we've done a lot more in terms of increasing programs and awareness when our soldiers come home. I have been helped in this every step of the way by our Lieutenant Governor Anthony Brown, who is here in the studio today. Lieutenant Governor Brown is the highest-ranking elected official in our country to have served a tour of duty in Iraq. And he has brought to this issue of our veterans a level of understanding and a level of sensitivity that I think has benefited all veterans throughout our state. We are a strong and great people. We have been involved in protracted wars abroad now for many, many years. We owe it to our National Guard. We owe it to all our returning veterans to do right by them when they come home. My father, Senator, flew 33 missions over Japan in a B-24 Liberator in the Second World War. He would not have gone to college had it not been for a grateful nation investing in the GI Bill. And that investment, that rising tide lifted all boats in our country and led to an era of prosperity, the likes of which we have seldom seen. And we need to make sure we do right by our veterans when they return. We are one of the top 3 states in this country in terms of our outreach and what we do on behavioral health help for our veterans upon their return, and we're proud of each and every one of them.
You know, the service of our dads on behalf of our country secured our freedom for our generation and future generations. And we all share that and we agree on it. And it makes our country great. And our generation, Governor, certainly benefited from their service and their sacrifice. In 2006, Mike Miller and Mike Bush and the Democratic leadership in Annapolis promised me, promised Governor O'Malley, they promised the veterans of this state they would pass the veterans tax exemption. It's 4 years later. It still hadn't passed. Not only is that bill important with regard to honoring our veterans, it's important concerning economic development. Our surrounding states exempt federal retirement on the military side. And Lieutenant Governor, I know this is an issue near and dear to your concern as well. We've now 5 years later and we still haven't passed this bill. As I said, it's not just an issue with regard to patriotism, it's an issue with regard to economic development. A veteran fits the profile of somebody you want living in your state. You know, veterans have served their country, they're patriotic, they join the Kiwanis, they join the Lions, they're taxpayers, they're smart, they have families, they're good consumers, the whole 9 yards. We should pass this bill. It's 5 years later. That promise is still out there. I spoke at the American Legion Convention this year. It's still out there. We can't lie to our veterans. Secondly, mental health services, obviously we agree on. Third, Secretary George Ellings was the best veteran secretary the state's ever seen. Fourth, I supported mental health parity in the Congress of the United States, one of the few Republicans to do so. So my record with regard to mental health services funding and parity is certainly a strong one. Fifth, with regard to need-based aid, we doubled need-based college aid for young people and returning veterans during my time in Congress. That waiting list now is quite long in the state of Maryland. Need-based aid as opposed to merit-based aid, by the way, is a real important distinction people need to understand when it comes to some of the demagoguery we've heard from the present governor concerning college tuition and college costs in the state.
Question. There is an issue of a constitutional convention for Maryland. What do you recommend the Maryland residents, Maryland voters do?
Man, that's a good one. I've met with some groups over the past couple of years who have felt very strongly. Most people are not familiar with the process. I think that it needs to be vetted in a very transparent way with the people, and I see an upside, particularly with regard to the fact this is pretty much a monopoly state. We have a lot of independents in the state. We have a lot of Democrats who feel disenfranchised. We have a lot of Republicans. An opportunity to modernize state government, an opportunity to engage in this process might be beneficial to the state. We'll see. It's something that's not been, quite frankly, a major issue in our campaign, but I think people need to have an open mind about it.
We've had constitutional conventions from time to time, and it can be a very positive thing. And if that's what people want to do, then that's what we should do. I want to go back just 1 second because there was a moment of agreement there. I would love to be able to do more to exempt veterans' retirement benefits in our state. So that's an area actually where the former governor and I agree. We've discussed that, but in the course of this recession, as I had conversations with our lieutenant governor, who I deeply respect for his service and his insight on this, he said, Martin, look, if it's a choice between doing right by these guys when they come back and having the behavioral health programs and doing more with services or doing the exemption, I'd rather see us put the dollars into saving their lives when they come home so they can become the moms and dads that we need them to be for all of us upon their return. But as far as the Constitutional Convention goes, and I still hope that as our economy comes back, I hope to be able to serve the people of our state long enough. We have now had the best year of new job creation that we've had since the year 2000. We've had, for the first time, 2 positive forecasts in revenues, where the revenues have come in over what was forecast. If we continue to move out of this recession ahead of other states, I hope we'll have the opportunity to do even more for veterans, not just those returning from Iraq and Afghanistan, but all veterans in our state.
Well, maybe if your business regulatory agency hadn't paid out $46 million in fraudulent claims, we could actually get veterans to stay in the state of Maryland and exempt their military retirement pay.
No idea what he's talking about.
As governor, would you consider mandating a percentage of state construction jobs for at-risk youth as paid apprentice trainees?
I think it's a great idea.
Sure. And one of the things that we've done that has not gotten a lot of attention is the Civic Justice Corps that we created, Senator, where we serve approximately 600 kids every summer. Some of them are children that might be described as at-risk kids. Almost all of them are children who have never been out in the woods before. And it was one of the most moving graduation ceremonies that you will ever attend was when we had the graduation ceremony from the Civic Justice Corps. They are paid a stipend for that 6-week period of time over the summer, and repairing trails and doing important and good work that needs to be done in our parks. But what it does beyond the work and beyond the pay, which is important, is that it also it allows our kids to actually be out in nature and experience that restorative value of being out in the woods and with the water. One of the drives that we have to improve upon in the years moving ahead is improving our career and technical education in all of our high schools. Our goal is that children graduate from high school not only with the ability to go on to college, but also with the ability to have a real marketable skill in this world. Because if lifelong learning is the new reality, then kids, when they come out of high school, need to have the ability to earn. Not in the old wood shop sort of way, but in places like Digital Harbor, where kids learn the technical skills in this new economy so that they can continue to earn and also to learn.
You know, kids in the workplace, life skills, employment skills, we agree on that, obviously, as a general matter. Every candidate, every office agrees on that. But we need to also focus on protege programs, mentor-mentee programs, revolving loan funds, the real mechanics of, for example, the MBE program in the state of Maryland. Our numbers were startlingly good during our administration. I talked about the percentage of state contracts increased dramatically. What I heard from this community, what Mike Steele would always tell me was, look, there's only one measure here. It's not black or white, it's green. And you know what? We can talk about these programs and we can get business people interested, and we can talk about subcontracts and we can talk about supplying contracts. But our people want to become general contractors. They want to become owners. They want equity interests in these business. And that was certainly our goal. Under Sharon Pinder, by the way, who was terrific with regard to our MBE program. And you should check with Sharon Pinder with regard to some of the allegations you made during this radio show today. Community colleges have been hammered under the O'Malley administration. Community colleges are in the vanguard of economic development in the state. You haven't funded CADE. Everybody knows it. The college presidents know. You didn't even appear before the community college presidents this year. Community colleges, it's my time again. Community colleges are truly in the vanguard of economic development. If you're talking about technology, and technology is never going backwards, it's always going forward. Retraining is always going to be an issue in all communities. We know that, let alone with young people. Community colleges are the way that the working poor, working class kids get an opportunity to go to school. And the increasing popularity of the 2+2 program, by the way, has great benefit in this state, whereby our community college kids can go to community college for 2 years and then go to a 4-year institution for the remaining 2. It's becoming increasingly popular, particularly with kids coming out of high school who don't have the money or the funds to pay for college tuition.
I want to make sure that we get you your 2 minutes for closing. So there's 2 questions, if I could. One deals with an issue that is of major concern. Former candidate Joe Barkenfeller brought it up, and this is the issue of, as you look at Baltimore County, the candidate mentioned the fact that we need a serious economic incentive, and he said you've got your waterways and things are happening, you got your white marshes and things are happening, but on that Liberty Road corridor and indeed in the city of Baltimore, there's a need for a culture, arts, and entertainment district. Several cities have decided they're going to pause and put something together where African Americans can own and run and be responsible for the arts, culture, entertainment district. Could you see the state following Paris Glendenning, who authorized a financial study of this, and then it died as a result of a senator who did not decide to stay within the Democratic Party?
Is mine first?
Yes, sir.
I think that
I think the arts districts are. I'm not as familiar with that legislation as Senator you appear to be, but I'm a big believer in the arts districts. The Station North Arts District that we created in the city some 8 years ago is now finally starting to take off, and I think doing something like that. I mean, there's a model that exists, and I think doing something like that in the Liberty Road corridor could be a very, very positive thing. And I look forward to working with the next county executive of Baltimore County. Kevin Kamenetz is a forward-looking leader, and I have no doubt that were he elected, that he would be interested in partnering on this. The community colleges were mentioned in the last question. I think it's important to point out that there were many formulas that called for inflationary increases all the time. And those formulas were put in place, like CADE, for good reason. But they did not apply in this unprecedented time, when after George Bush drove our economy into a ditch, we have headed into 3 of the toughest years that our economy has seen in a long, long time. So, but even with that, Larry, Senator, we have increased our funding to community colleges by 37%. There are not many things that have seen any increase in their budget over these last 4 years, but funding, and particularly school construction and operating funding, K-12, our community colleges, and higher education for more affordable college are a few of the areas where we have seen increases, achieved increases.
For those of you keeping score at home, that's the second gratuitous George Bush mentioned during this debate. The answer to the question is I look forward to working with Ken Holt, the next Baltimore County executive, in developing cultural arts districts in the county. Of course, we funded those districts, by the way, through our business development agency, DBED. Dennis Castleman, our tourism director, was a champion of those districts. I was raised by an artist, you know that, Senator, so those districts are important to me in a very personal way.
Neither one of you would mind if the mayor of Baltimore stepped up front and got it done first.
It's a good thing. We agree on
Very
it.
good. Gentlemen, we're at the point where we're going to give each of you a 2-minute closing statement. I certainly, again, want to state on behalf of Radio 1, Dr. Kathy Hughes, Mr. Howard Mazur, Mr. Al Payne, and the Radio 1 family of Baltimore. We thank you so very much. We certainly want to give great appreciation to WOL, to Spirit 1400, and to our guests for coming and being such a cooperative audience. At this point, based on the toss, Governor Ehrlich, you give your 2-minute statement first.
Thanks, Senator. Thanks, everybody, for listening. It's thank you, Governor, too. Third debate, always interesting. This is a record. This is a campaign, I should say, about records. The governor's record is not a good one. It's pretty dismal. Doubled unemployment in the state of Maryland. We've had 3,000 small businesses shuttered. We've increased our debt burden. We've had mass illegal arrests during your time as mayor. We've raised the sales tax, the most regressive tax in the tax code. We've had a 72% increase in BGE rates. And you said there'd be 0, and you were wrong. We hit community colleges hard, and particularly with regard to this community, we've had no partisan commutations process to speak of. The only process, the only time that process is counted in this state in the last 20 years was during a Republican governor. The attacks have been ludicrous. Lobbyists, incorrect. Tuition increase 35% in system schools. BGE 72% increase. Increased spending, you increased spending $123 billion. I sit on a bank board. You know I didn't sit on a bank board, Governor. Your ads are just over the top and they're insulting to the people, and that's why your polls are tanking. With regard to our record, it's competent revitalization, it's the Morgan Library, historic funding for HBCUs, 12 African-American judges, the first African-American judge in Maryland's history with regard to the Eastern Shore, no furloughs of state employees, Thurgood Marshall, BWI Airport, Michael Steele, Project Restart, pardons and commutations, MB participation up by almost $400 million our first 2 years, need-based college aid doubled, and a lead-paid initiative. Those are the records. We compare and contrast the past. We have 2 governors. We get that. It's understandable. The voters want to do that. It's understandable that these subjects have been debated during the course of the last 3 times we've gotten together. But the fact of it is, during a serious time in our state's history and our country's history, people want serious leadership. They want serious initiatives. They want leadership.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Senator Young, thank you, and to WOLB and to Radio 1, the whole Radio 1 family. And I especially want to thank the people of our state for how hard you have been working through these last 3 really difficult years. So far this year, we are now creating jobs at a rate that is twice what the national rate of job creation is. This has been our best year of new job creation since the year 2000. But we have to keep moving forward. In order for our president to be successful in moving America forward, we have to do our part in moving Maryland forward. We have to continue to improve education. In recent years, we have cut the achievement gap between black and white students in our elementary grades in half. We have protected all-time record investments in K-12 education. For the first time ever, and in the middle of a recession, we're receiving accolades from experts all around the country about the excellence of our schools. We have driven crime down together to its lowest levels since 1975. And in every fight, I have stood up for you. The big banks, the big utility companies, the big casino interests have all the lobbyists, or, Governor, if you prefer, government affairs specialists that money can buy. I serve no special interest but the interests of the people of our state. I'm proud of the people of our state. I'm proud of the progress that we are making, but we can't stop now. We need to continue to move forward. We have been fiscally responsible. We're one of only 8 states that still maintains a AAA bond rating. We have increased minority business development to record high dollar amounts and record high percentages that were never achieved in easier times. A person's character is the product of a lifetime. The former governor, when he was in Congress, earned an F every year from the NAACP. He, in fact, even urged the IRS under George Bush to investigate the NAACP and take away their tax exemption status. I believe we're all in this together and that we need to move forward to that better future we prefer for our kids. Thank you, Katie O'Malley, for being the love of my life.